time. Hello, and welcome to Into the Liminal Abyss Paranormal Podcast. I am your show host, Shetan Noir, and on today's show, I have Mr. Daniel Benoit, and he is not only a cryptozoologist and a Bigfoot researcher, but he also runs the ECBRO, which is the East Coast Bigfoot Researchers Organization. Welcome, Daniel, to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And thank you for coming on the show today. Now, I always ask everybody this question at the beginning of my interviews. And what is your background and how did you become interested in cryptozoology?
Well, to make a long story very short, I'm an individual who kind of grew up playing in the woods. The woods has always been my playground. Spent a lot of time hunting and following along with my father since a young age, and being well acquainted with the wildlife. And that continued over the years as I got older. And of course, one famous thing that's very common for a lot of people who are involved with Bigfoot and and cryptozoology in general is the famous Patterson footage from 1967.
Oh yes.
Yes, that there is a big part of what got me started. It was the main part of it. There was other little factors here and there that played their key roles that got me really sparked into this. So ever since I've studied that film as far as watching documentaries and how science has tried to dissect that film, it's really increased my enthusiasm, and to push me to go into the field and really open up my senses to really start paying more attention. And, and before you knew it, I was noticing things that the average person would not pick up on or notice, So, when your senses become really, truly opened up, and you're out there in the field and you're familiar with wildlife, you'll be surprised what you will find out there. I'm telling you. And at the same time, just for the record, I'm a very objective individual. I look at things and I take a scientific approach to the best of my ability. And, and being objective in the field is very important, especially in any kind of research field. So, and that's how I take my approach to this. So.
Now, going back to the Patterson Gimlin film, I suspect that you are just like many of us other researchers. You remember the exact age when you saw the first viewing of that film, and also films like The Legend of Boggy Creek, because they make such a mental impact on everyone. I remember I was actually camping at a campground with my parents around 9 or 10 years old when I saw that footage first, and I can honestly say it freaked me out. But did you have a similar experience with when you first saw it?
Well, to be honest with you, it was something that was very how should I put this? I don't know. It was like like a kid seeing a new toy or a new show, coming out for the first time. It was exciting. It was exciting. It was fascinating. And not just seeing the film, but like one particular documentary that had a Mr. Bill Munns, a graphic analyst, with him, watching what he did, and along with other science that's got involved. That's what impressed me, is when they were unable to debunk it, where everything points towards that being a real life, flesh and blood animal. Mm-hmm. Well, I shouldn't say animal because people frown on that. People like to believe it's a human or some type of person. But I just usually refer to them as a being or a subject, to play it safe. I have my standpoint on what I believe or think they are. So, but yeah, it was very fascinating. It was very fascinating. So.
Now, have you had any firsthand encounters or sightings of Bigfoot or Sasquatch? I don't know what term you use, but I use those two, Bigfoot and Sasquatch.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do too. I myself, I do refer to them as Bigfoot, Sasquatch. I personally, I have actually a couple different encounters and several different other experiences, with different occurrences that's happened out in the woods. But as far as encounters go, the first one didn't happen until 2014, and I wasn't alone. There were 6 of us total, and it was during a camping expedition. And here we are, hiking, exploring, and hoping to find something, some evidence. Because we do a lot of exploring during the daytime, looking for signs, tracks, and other interesting things. However, it happened very late at night. We were approximately about a mile from our base camp, and we were on foot. And where we were at the particular time, we were spared in 2. We were put up in pairs of 2. We were spread out around this lake. Where there was nobody down there but us at that time, and basically all we were doing is just experimenting, playing around. A couple of us had parabolic mics. We gave off some vocalizations, which it was a perfect place to do that. And it turned out to be a really good thing that we chose to go down there, because we actually got a response from one of our the vocals that got put out there. But after spending some time down there, it was already late. It was time for us to start to regroup and head back towards the camp. And now where this lake was, like I said, it was approximately about a mile. So we set back on foot, head back, and as we were headed out of the lake road, we were in a single file line, and as we were working our way forward, I was up in front of everybody, and then everybody else, like I said, single file trail behind us, me, and we picked up a couple of notices of some deer on the deer on the side of the road, walking through the woods. It was so dark you couldn't see their body. All you noticed was their eye shine, and we had our headlamps on. So probably not even a minute or 2 after seeing the deer, something catches my attention up on the opposite side of the forest road, or the lake road, as you want to call it. And I didn't know what I was looking at. There was some kind of reflection, and I'm trying to focus my eyes on it. And next, I noticed there was a set of eyes. It blinked. And the next person that was behind me was my buddy Tracy Arnold, which is another Virginia Bigfooter. And he controls a group there of his own. Anyway, I called him up there. I said, Tracy. I said, look at that. I said, what is that? And, of course, the actual language I used was, I'll try not to use that, but I was like, I was like, what the hell is that? Is that a mountain lion? So that's the first thought that ran through my mind, because these were fairly large, yellowish-looking, glowing eyes that blinked at me. And it was setting kind of low. And that's what made me think it was, a possible mountain lion, because I know they are there. Now, whatever the set of the eye shine was, he noticed it too, but then it went off. It went away. Tracy yelled to the rest of the group, guys, get up here. We got some eye shine going on up here. So we worked our way up to where we saw that eye shine. And then when we get to that spot, then we started noticing, wow, the ground off the side of the road is slopes way down. No wonder why it was low. And it sloped down and it leveled out. And it probably sloped down several feet. And then when we get in there, we see the eye shine again. And we're staring at this eye shine. And here it is. We can tell what it's doing. It's doing the swaying side-to-side motion fairly fast.
Uh-huh.
And and then it kind of slowed down a little bit, but it kept that side-to-side motion going on. So as we're watching this, we noticed another set of eye shine, just 4 or 5 feet to the right of this one. And now keep in mind, for the record, before I say any more, that small one, I am saying a small one, was swaying side to side. It was approximately about 4 feet high. Okay? Now the next one was much taller. It was just standing there. It was probably, we estimated around 6 foot on this one. And I'll get into explaining a little bit afterwards of the height, because we did do a height comparison the next day. So yeah, here we are. We were observing this small one that's swaying side to side, and about 4 or 5 feet to the right of it, another set of eye shine, again approximately around 6 feet tall. Now at this time, we weren't noticing no shape, no silhouette, just the eyes. And the other one was just occasionally blinking its eyes. Now there's a possibility maybe our eyes, our headlamps were a little bright. That's understandable. So that's what we noticed, and both of them had the same color eye shine. And of course, the 6 foot one, the eyes were a little bigger. So this was going on for probably about 2 or 3 minutes, seeing the two of them together. And then it got a lot more interesting, because over to the right of the 6 foot one, we noticed something low behind the bushes. But what we saw, we noticed the eye shine. It was low behind the bushes, and the eye shine was raising up. It was slowly raising, as if it was possibly what we believe they may have been crouched down, possibly. We don't know. But it makes sense, considering it raised up above the 6 foot one, easily 2 feet. And here we are, we're looking at an 8 foot subject.
Ooh.
We got a 4 foot, 6 foot, now we got an 8 foot one. And this one here, this is where it gets a lot more interesting. Because like I said, keep in mind, all we're observing is eye shine. They all three have the same color eye shine, bright yellowish looking eyes, and the 6 foot and 8 foot, their eye shine is about the same distance apart, which is fairly wide, and they're bright yellow eyes. And some of us, we're not scared. For some reason, we're not scared. I think we were slightly stunned, but more excited, because a couple of us were making some noises, trying to maybe possibly get a response. And so this whole time, all this is going on, they're just standing there, small one still moving side to side. This tall one showed us a shape, because it took a left turn. Oh, it would be its left turn, and possibly it appeared to have taken a step or two, and then looked back at us. Now, when it did that, that's when a shape was made out. What we saw, I know there was like three of us saw that. Me, Tracy, and I think it was Kimmy that was with it too. When it took that step and made that maneuver, wide, broad shoulders and a big round head was made out. And that's when it convinced me, because I wasn't saying nothing. I believe it was Tracy, the one that spoke up and said it. Guys, we got squashes. So, yeah, it was no doubt. I mean, I have no doubt whatsoever, because, like I said, we observed all this for between a total of 5 to not quite 10 minutes. I wouldn't say 10 minutes, but it seemed like a long time. But I think, because, like I said, we were slightly stunned, and it was exciting. And I didn't feel scared. I don't think anyone else did either. And perhaps it was probably because there were 6 of us total. But after a little while, the 3 subjects that we were observing never made no noise, but they all turned off and disappeared further into the darkness. And for anyone wanting to know, this took place just after midnight. So after they disappeared, we slowly started working our way back, taking the time to head back. And a couple of people was like, guys, they're we had one person say that, I think they're parallel on us. I said, why do you say that? So, we did hear, maybe a possible snap or something like that. I said, well, apparently they're walking. I don't think they're following us. And, and from that observation, I think we caught them off guard, and it was, to me, it was a staring contest because it appears that they were curious about us as we were about them.
Right.
So, I mean, that's the way I took it. Now, here's something that's kind of disappointing but kind of funny at the same time. By the time we got back to our camp, I think, well, after we settled down, the excitement brewed back up a little bit. We were still talking about it and, going at it. And now, me and Tracy Arnold were the only ones with backpacks. And both of us, and each of our backpacks had night vision. Not once did we think about pulling them out to get a really good look at what we were observing. So, yeah, we were kicking ourselves in the butt for that, And, it was very disappointing, because it would have been great to get some detailed features, which we didn't. It was just eye shine and a silhouette shape,
Right.
But, so, yeah, that was one of our moments that we've had in, as far as, having that in any form of encounter. Now, a year later, in that same part of the woods, same section of woods, during the hunting season, I was actually camping out, and just around the corner from there. And there was no one else camping in that general area because there was only one other spot nearby, and there was nobody there. But in 2015, I was sitting by my campfire, and it was just a little quiet. It was just a little too quiet, and I decided to stand up, grab my spotlight, and just walk out into the middle of the forest road, and just to start seeing if there's any animals or anything crossing the road or whatever. But for some reason, something made me just go out to the middle of the road and start shining my spotlight in the woods across from on the opposite side of my camp. And as soon as I started shining it to my left, right away, I must have spooked a deer because you could hear the sound of a deer like running off, just inside the tree line.
Right.
So I'm starting to pan from left to right, and as I approached, if you picture the position of a clock, here I am going from 10 o'clock and going all the way, as soon as I pass 1 o'clock to my right, all of a sudden something inside the tree line, I don't know if it knew I was there, because I think I think if it knew if I was there sooner, it probably would have moved away sooner. But when I hit the spotlight over there, the only thing I heard just beside that tree line was something very large and very heavy and bipedal walk away from me. And there was no doubt that it was large, heavy footsteps walking away from me. They sound very close, but you could hear as they were stepping away, it was going away from me. So apparently it didn't want to be seen. And keep in mind, I did not see nothing during this time, but I was very close to whatever that was. And being bipedal, I mean, what else is going to be in the woods, very heavy and large? And each step as it takes a crunch and a thump as it steps, and you could almost feel, it's hard to describe, but it's just, it had me nervous. I was by myself, and I had a shotgun, but that was over there at my camp leaning against the back of my vehicle. But when I heard that, I kept the light shining that way, and I was walking backwards, reaching down on my hip, because I had my keys. I was pushing the button for my vehicle to make sure it was unlocked, just in case I had to jump in it. But, that air was a little nervous. It had me a little scared, so I'm not afraid to admit that I get scared. But, any other time, I'm not scared in the woods. It's just when you don't see what's there, but it's there, it's a different story.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And the thing is, I've had a lot of encounters with bears throughout my time in the woods, and I'm not scared of bears. I'm really not, because most of the time, by the time you see them, they're already going in the opposite direction, because bears don't like to be bothered.
Yeah, black bears are very easily just spook.
Yes.
My mom works with black bears for a living. She is up at the in Ely, Minnesota, at the North American Bear Center. So she deals with black bears a lot. But she tells me of situations where, like, senior citizens that she knows just go out with garbage bags, and they rattle the garbage bags at the black bears, and the black bears take off. They run for shelter. My 7-pound min pin has even done a bluff charge on a black bear and chased it off. So they're easy to spook.
Oh yeah, very timid. Yes, indeed. And for the record too, that's one thing. When if I give presentations, I try to specify and make sure people understand. And I say this and present this because I want people to start understanding it's very important about wildlife in general. Because when I introduce myself, I'm a wildlife and Bigfoot researcher.
Right.
Now, do I have any degree in any of this? No, but I've been studying a lot, both in and out of the field, to give myself an understanding. And it's very important to learn everything you can about every known wildlife, especially what that may inhabit your area.
Right.
Bear, like black bears, any bear, for example, is very important too, because a lot of you hear people say, "Oh, there ain't no bears in my area." They don't know that, because
right.
Just because you don't see them doesn't mean they're not there. Because bears are very elusive on the most part too. I see a lot of bear sign. I'm out in the woods a lot, and I study the bear sign. And bears can be very easily misidentified, especially their tracks. People that are not aware or well informed, a lot of people are misinformed, not educated properly when it comes to wildlife, especially black bears. They see a black bear a foot track. Oh, we got Bigfoot tracks here. Especially a double step bear track.
Right.
Those are very commonly mistaken. So yeah, there's a lot of people that are very misinformed that don't understand these things, and that's why I do a lot of presentations with wildlife, especially primates. I'm not a primatologist, but I've learned a lot about primates in general. And that's very important with the research that I share with my presentation on what I believe what Bigfoot is, et cetera, et cetera. But back to everything else. Yeah, as far as bears and what was walking away from me, I tell people, I will tell you without a doubt, that was not a bear. It was something bipedal. So like I said, what else is in the woods is going to be bipedal besides a human or a Bigfoot? So
yeah, I completely agree with you that people need to have an understanding and knowledge of what is living around them. I've been telling people this is, with the stay-at-home ordinances that we have in different states, this is a great time to go sit out on your front porch or your back porch or in your yard and just observe the birds, because if you're in Bigfooting, you know how important that is, because so many times we get reports of, well, I was in the woods and I was hearing these bird calls, but they didn't sound right. Either it wasn't the full bird call, or it was, there was something weird about it. And so it's important to know what birds are in your location, what songs they make, so that you can understand and know when it's actually the bird or when it's something mimicking the bird calls like a Bigfoot will do. And, because that's just one more tool that you can use in your research of, figuring out what you're dealing with.
Exactly. And I'm actually glad you brought that up, because if you don't mind, I'd like to make a brief statement.
Sure.
Now, I know in my area, or here in Virginia, in the National Forest, the George Washington National Forest, and on my years of camping out here and learning these woods, there's one particular bird that a lot of people like to bring up, and it's the owl. Now, we have barred owls.
Yep.
But a lot of people like to use the owls. When they hear an owl sound, a lot of people, I used to hear it a lot. It's kind of calmed down now, but people will hear a sound, They say, oh, that's a Bigfoot mimicking an owl. Well, that's a possibility. I'm not going to deny that completely, but as far as owls, here in Virginia, the barred owl is very common. I've heard them multiple times over the years. They, especially at night. I've seen them during the daytime. And barred owls, they give off. A lot of people think, when they think of certain animals, they think of basic common sounds, but they neglect to understand that a lot of these different animals and birds, they have different tones.
Yes,
they sound different. Yeah. And especially coyotes, to get not to get sidetracked off the owl, but there's several different animals have several different tones that they can project. Now, those tones, even if you get familiar with those tones are going to sound completely different. If you got ridges and mountains and hills and hollows all surrounding your general area, and when those owls start communicating back and forth, yeah, something's going to sound a little deeper compared to what it would sound like if it was just, 20, 30, 40, 50 yards away from you, So, yeah, people got to think about these things or get familiar with these things. That's where a lot of people are misinformed or just not simply aware of this. So, and that's my whole key thing when I do presentations, with Bigfoot presentations, is spreading awareness. Because I present a wildlife side of things as I slowly work and feed my way into presenting the Bigfoot side of things. Because there's a lot of comparisons, a lot of things where it could be very confusing if you don't pay attention.
Right.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, that's me. So.
Yeah, I know. Where I live, we have coyotes and foxes. The foxes were here first, so. But I've heard so many times where people talk about they hear what they think is a woman screaming or a Bigfoot screaming.
Oh yeah.
And I've got the recordings of our fox because we have a female who likes to do her screams and she doesn't care. I've walked out and yelled at her before because she's been sitting on our gazebo, just making her calls, and it's like, seriously, it's like midnight. Could you please stop? Some people like to sleep. But people think that these fox screams are Bigfoots or a woman in distress, and it's like, no. Here again, you need to learn what different vocalizations creatures make, because the first time I heard her doing it, because she was running around our property and doing her scream every like 30 seconds. And it actually woke me out of a good sleep at 5:30 in the morning. And I'm hearing this and I'm thinking, what is that? Because it would get closer and then it would go away. And about the time that I noticed it, my dogs noticed it, and they're used to going out at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I'm thinking, crap, what is this out there? So, it ended up being the fox, because they do that. They make that skunky smell. When they're being territorial. And so I walked outside with my 150-pound Connie Corso Mastiff on her tie-out lead, and I saw her sprinting across, the fox sprinting across the yard. So then I had a confirmation. Yep, that's who was making all the noise. And since then, we have several generations of fox that show up on our property. And they always bring the young out in the early summer, so we get to see them and see them, grow throughout the year. But I have that knowledge now that that's what that sound is. That scream is from the fox, and it's only because either she's calling her young, or she's yelling at somebody, or she's just doing it to do it. Because she does it all times of the year, and so it's not just for mating. It's not just for calling her kits. It's whenever she feels like doing it.
Yeah, with that being said, that's another thing that reminds me, like especially during this time, if people don't go out, can't get out, or whatever the reason, and any bit of your spare time. I mean, it's easy to if you can't get out the woods, if you're not sure what an animal sounds like that you never heard or experienced before. That's one thing I tell people. Get on YouTube. Look it up on YouTube. You'll be surprised what you'll find on YouTube. There's a lot of animal sounds, and you like, for example, you were just talking about the fox. People can get on YouTube and look up the different tones and sounds of foxes. Like a very common sound I hear a lot. It's similar to the victim call. If you go on YouTube, look up the call of a victim, and which is a fox,
Mm-hmm.
But it's very interesting. It's like, people are totally unaware of that. But and then other sounds, like back to talking about the owl. I've had people out at my camp, and some of the god awful scream or some of the sounds that the owls make. I mean, they'll catch you off guard, and they will make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. Because I've had a couple people like jump out of their seats and like, dude, did you hear that? I was like, yeah, it's just an owl. No, they're like, nuh-uh. I said, yeah, trust me, it's an owl. I know my owls.
Right.
I said, yeah, it'll catch you off guard, but yeah, I know. But at the same time, I know what their sounds are. And I said, but it's very educational because people come to learn some of these the hard way. But so
Yeah, it's
so.
just or even taking it one step further, go to your local zoo and just spend the whole day going to different animal enclosures and listening to the sounds they make. Particularly like peacocks. Peacocks make the most weirdest noises. And people get them because they're exotic looking and they're beautiful, but they don't realize, one, how vocal they are, two, how territorial they are, and three, how messy they are. So you get peacocks showing up in different locations. Zoos get a lot of them because people dump them there. They kind of throw them over the fence, and then once a peacock's established they're kind of like chickens. Once they've established a feeding area and a living area, they stay. And so, but they make the weirdest noises.
Right.
Their calls are just loud and very very obnoxious almost.
Yeah, I've been around peacocks in zoos myself, but it's been so long. I personally don't remember what they sound like either. But yeah, you're right. That's a good idea people get to go out to the zoos. And I know every state, I'm pretty sure every state, I know Virginia does. We have wildlife centers, and the wildlife center has programs that are open to the public. Or you could call down to your local wildlife center. A lot of times they have different species there on site. A lot of times most of the species they have there are,
owner surrenders and stuff like that.
Yeah, and then they use some of their animals that are there healing to get better. They use some of them for educational purposes. And I know the one here in Virginia, the one local to me, they do carry hawks and owls throughout the year. Sometimes when they get them, but it varies. But yeah, again, they do have educational programs, so which is good. But they introduce the wildlife that they have with them to the public. So,
and even
but that's. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No problem. Speaking of, like, if you go to the zoo, you'd be surprised how, like, the different calls of different primates are. A couple years back, it was me, and my aunt and my two cousins, and the one cousin was quite young at the time. I think he was under 10. But we were near this, I believe it was lemurs enclosure, and we thought he had found some alarm to pull because they all started going off, and this sound that they were making was very similar to what an alarm system would sound like. And so we were scolding him. Then we realized he hadn't triggered anything. It was the lemurs reacting to something. I don't think it was us because they were looking into another enclosure, but they were reacting, and the sound that they were making was very, very loud, like a car alarm, and very similar to a car, like a car alarm type sound. But it was organic. They were making this sound, and I would not have known that a a lemur or a small primate would make a sound like that. But I actually recorded it, and it's on one of my laptops somewhere. But it was just, it was like, wow, that's really interesting that they make that kind of a noise. And I'm assuming that they use that sound was for that purpose. Was an alarm call.
Right. Yeah. Talking about primates too, I challenge people because I could share a lot of information about them, but I challenge people to start listening to the different primate sounds. Listen to the different. A lot of them have to do with behaviors or communication. And, if people start listening to these different sounds, especially from like lemurs that you're talking about, but as far as getting into the bigger primates, such as chimpanzees, gorillas, bonobos, baboons, and all these different primates, listen to their sounds. They all have different meanings. Like a lot of times they're communication sounds. Sometimes they're signs of intimidation to another primate. But if you start listening to a lot of these different sounds, and then for those who are out in the woods long enough, here in our country, here in the United States, you're going to start hearing similar sounds. And you're going to be like, what in the world? And, I'm kind of blown away sometimes. I was like, these sounds like primates that are living in the jungle out here. I'm hearing similar sounds, different, anywhere from different howls and weird whoops and this and that. And so these sound like primates. And, I've heard people report to me that, people that are skeptics and stuff that told me they've heard, they've been camping in the woods in certain areas. And I had one guy tell me, Daniel, I heard something that sounded like his language, I'll leave that part out. But he said, I heard something that sounded like a effing monkey. I was like, and I looked at him. I said, really? And so that it was kind of exciting because it supports more where little things like that. It's not enough to. I'm not trying to prove that Bigfoot's a ape, but I do believe they are an ape or a primate of some sort.
Right.
Just unclassified. And I use a lot of non-human primate research to do with comparisons with what we come across and experience in our own neck of the woods. Because there's people say, well, I believe he's human. He's not ape. Well, you're contradicting yourself because according to science, us humans, we're apes. So,
right.
So you learn to understand the language of science and, and the terminologies and, it can be very complicated because especially when I give presentations, there's evolution. People believe in evolution. Well, unfortunately, I don't. But at the same time, I believe in adaptation. There is a difference there. So, but, there's a lot of people that believe that Bigfoot is a possible descendant of Gigantopithecus. I have that belief somewhere along the line. There's different theories there, but but the thing is, we can never make a statement as a fact until we can find that solid evidence.
Right.
People as much as people don't like to hear it, you need a body. You need a body because if you don't have a specimen, because for example, you can have all the DNA samples in the world and call them Bigfoot, which is wrong because unless you have a body to compare those samples to, you don't have nothing identified. People don't understand science. So again, you got to have a body. So there's new primates being discovered all the time. There's other species always being discovered all the time, or rediscovered. I should say, because there's a lot of what we refer to as cryptids, were animals that were once known to exist that have gone extinct, but people are rediscovering them. And yeah, of course we put Bigfoot in that category of a cryptid because there were there's evidence that supports large primates that once existed. So And of course, there's other things along the way which I won't get into. But so yeah, I have my beliefs and theories, and I have a lot of little things that, to me, that support it. So but everybody has their own opinion. Everybody's entitled to their own belief. But the only thing I tell people, I said, you can tell me what you believe all you want. I'm not gonna hate you for it. We could always agree to disagree. But what do you have to support your belief? That's what I ask people. I said, I'll present my side, but you're going to present what you believe. Why do you believe that? What supports that, Is it, but, so, that's just me. I'm not no know-it-all. I don't know everything. I'm not afraid to admit that I don't know something about something, whatever it may be. But I have some strong beliefs and why I believe in what I do. So, but
well, everybody has a different. We all get asked the same questions, but everybody has a different answer for that. Those same questions. So it just it's up to individual interpretation. That's what I've always believed in. Like you said, nobody's really an expert because. Scientifically speaking, nobody has ever caught one. Nobody's ever come across a dead body of one. So really, all we have is the evidence that people collect and speculation. And so it's you have to find what's a good medium between both, and then pursue from that point on.
Right. Yeah, talking about a body, that's another famous question I get asked by skeptics or non-believers. Well, if Bigfoot exists, why haven't we found a body? Well, I don't try to get into a big explanation because I come back with a question for them to think about before they, because there's a question they need to know and they need to think about it before asking such a question. Well, let's look at a couple of our known species that we know that does exist. Bears, mountain lions. Those they're considered apex predators.
Yeah,
well,
a skeleton.
And the number one,
a skeleton or a body will not. If something dies in the woods, it doesn't stay there for very long because everything comes and feeds off of it.
Right, exactly. And that's another thing people need to understand. The question is, well, why haven't we found a bear that's died of natural causes?
Right.
Why don't we find the remains of a mountain lion that's died of natural causes? People don't understand there's so much out there that people are unaware of. There's dens, there's caves, there's all kinds of places. And even if they die off into a den or a deep cave or something, yeah, we're not going to find it there. We're not going to find that unless we discover that den or that cave and go in there and say, oh, look, there's a dead bear here. And then you said it yourself, too. The other mammals, the other rodents, and everything that's going to take those bones and all that and scatter it around.
Oh, yes.
And then on top of that, if any of those animals, even a deer, I've come across a lot of deer kills and dead deer, coyotes and stuff, and other animals attack and kill those animals, but even the bones of a known animal, like another known animal, like a deer, for example, if it dies way up in a deep mountain where no one really ever goes, well, think about the seasons every year. The forest canopy, always adds a new blanket. That's what I've referred to. I have my way of referring to things, but the ground gets covered every year. And then even those other rodents are still finding those bones because bones will end up getting eaten up and decay. And also the other thing is, too, because bones, if they're laid out in a certain area for a while, nature takes over, not just covering it, but sometimes those bones grow moss, just like a stick or something that's been out there, And people forget about the soils, like out in the Pacific Northwest. I'll reuse that, even though I believe it's a lot similar here in Virginia. You have areas where the soil is highly acidic, where the bones will not, what's the way I'm trying to refer to this? The bones won't be preserved as long as, versus if it was in a sandy soil or something
Right,
like that. You
right.
know, so a lot of people forget about that too. You know.
Yeah.
Primate bones in general. Another fact about primate bones: primate bones do not last long compared to other species. But when it comes to primate bones, they dissolve and break down a lot quicker. Especially you put in acidic soil like the rainforest, or places that hold a lot of water. And that's another fun project to do if you want to know. If you want to really deeply get involved with science when it comes to animal remains, do some soil samples, study the soil. There's a lot of different things you could do that will help understand your ecology and your research area. So, I turn, even though this is started off as a passion, it's over the years the passion has grown. I turned it into a project, more or less. So there's a lot to learn if you put science involved. A lot of people neglect science for some, I don't know why, but we live science every day.
Right.
But yeah, I'm sorry if I'm just rambling.
Oh, no, I'm enjoying it. I was going to add, a lot of people don't realize that, they might realize that our bones are made of calcium, but what they don't realize is calcium is not readily available out in the woods, in nature. So anytime a rodent or a pregnant female of any species comes across bones, that is a good source of calcium, of other mineral deposits, of bone marrow, and that it's a very highly sought after element out in the woods, calcium and also salt for the potassium. And people don't realize that when it comes to a dead body out in the woods, it's a free for all. It's whoever gets to it first, takes as much as they want. But the reason you hardly ever find complete skeletons is you have this creature carry off a bone and that creature carry off a bone, and maybe this creature doesn't want to carry it off but gnaws on a bone, and so you have all these different case scenarios that play into why we never find skeletons in the woods. Heck, people go missing in the woods and we never find them. So
right,
the explanation of, well, why hasn't there been a body found yet of a Sasquatch? Well, explain to me why there's so many hikers who go missing every year in the national state forests or wooded areas, and we never find their bodies.
Right.
Because the same scenario is playing out for the Bigfoot body, the bear body, or the human body.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Because you're talking about the missing persons, and that reminds me of Paul Paulides' missing 411.
Yeah, the 411. Yep.
Yeah, I have yet to really actually look into that myself. I know he's got some books out there, and I know a lot of people bring it up in discussions when we have our podcasts and stuff on occasions. But I guess that's something I need to get my butt on. I need to jump on that. I'll check into that, because that is, I understand why he put those books out there, Mr. 411. It's not, it's not saying that Bigfoot's doing it or responsible, but it's a very good possibility. It can be. We just don't know that,
And I don't know how. I know that you're well vested into the Bigfoot research, but in North America, we also have another big bipedal creature, which is the Dogman. And some people are associating the missing person reports with Dogman encounters, where I think you have more chances of walking away from an encounter with a Bigfoot than you do the Dogman.
Yeah, the Dogman, I won't dismiss it, but when people ask me about the Dogman, I said, well, does Dogman have a history like Bigfoot does? Because you could go hundreds and hundreds of years back, Native Americans, as far as Native Americans acknowledge a lot of wildlife, and they actually acknowledge Bigfoot. Especially with their documentation, with their drawings. But that's one thing. Dogman. If Dogman does exist, I'd never, like I said, I'm not going to dismiss it but I've been in these groups where people post these tracks and call them Dogman. First of all, they're posting cat tracks and thinking they're canine.
Right.
So there's a lot of people just chasing shadows, I think, but it's just like I said, the earliest known thing to a dogman was that I could think of was back in the early 1980s, back up in Michigan. But
which is my neck of the woods.
Oh, okay. Oh, so that's where you're from. Okay.
Yep. So I know quite a bit about our dogman sightings up here, but there actually are reports that go back to the early logging industry where loggers were encountering a dogman type creature.
Now, here's another interesting thing, and this has been brought up on a number of occasions. I know we've talked about it on our podcast, but dogman, can dogman be a type of Bigfoot? For example, because people believe there are so many different types of Bigfoot. The description does vary throughout the different parts of the country, different regions. Could dogman, like, for example, think of a baboon.
Right.
They got that canine snout, and they got sharp teeth, Can there be a Bigfoot that's that type of primate? I like to believe there possibly, maybe, but I don't know that. I don't, but so that's a theory I was like, but people, they describing it having, a canine type snout, the ears, and, so I don't know. I try not to get too much involved with talking about that, but
right.
But
well, it is a
I try to think primate. Like I said, people might be misidentifying because people had misidentified bears and thought they were Bigfoot too.
Right.
So,
right.
But so I don't know. It could be very tricky. I think we would need some kind of evidence. I believe we have a lot of Bigfoot evidence that even though science is very objective towards it, where they won't accept it, but there's some protocols and scientific work involved where that could turn tables with them. But I've been in discussions with professors and others that working together on a kind of a solo thing involved with that. But so I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know. I like I said, I won't dismiss it, but I keep it in the back of my mind, like. It could be a misidentified thing. If it's real, I would love to see some kind of evidence of it. I know people post a lot of different alleged photos of Bigfoot, on social media.
Right.
And a lot of them are very questionable. Then again, some of them, if you dig up enough dirt, you'll find that there's enough that's, a lot of it's hoaxing. But,
yeah.
So, but. Yeah, I personally would love to see some kind of evidence of a dogman.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people like to take dark shadows and images and pareidolia and claim it as something real. But people, there's a lot of people that deceive and fool themselves, and then the people that follow them, they get fooled and deceived, and
right.
It's a chain, and
it's like a chain. And like years afterwards, you're seeing the same photos pop up of. And people are, oh, I just caught this evidence. And it's like, no, we saw that like 3 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
But, now I do like your theory that the dogman might be another version of Bigfoot. And I'll tell you why, because I have talked to other Bigfoot researchers who have told me that when they start to get dogman activity in a location, the Bigfoots that they know are there leave. And so I'm wondering if it's a competing tribe that are just taking on the local tribe and pushing them out because they want the resources that are in that location. We see that with troops of chimpanzees and some of the great apes, where the members of one tribe will decide we're going to take on this other tribe and kill off the males, keep the females, but then we have a bigger breeding population, a bigger resources, and so if chimpanzees and apes are doing it, I don't see why. And human beings actually do it. We've done it all throughout history. Why a Bigfoot society wouldn't do that?
Right. Well, I was just thinking too. Another thing came to mind. Um, there has been, and not many, but there has been a few bipedal three-toed tracks
Yes.
that have been found. For example, it's believed that the Bigfoot, the legend of down at the Falk monster, that Bigfoot was known to be three-toed, and there has been three-toed bipedal tracks found in Pennsylvania, and of course, people haven't seen what made those tracks, but they believe they're possible Bigfoot because there's been Bigfoot sightings in that area. But so
Yeah.
it's very questionable. It's kind of hard, to really determine what it is. But
Right.
so that's another thing I think about is the Falk monster. That was considered a three-toed Bigfoot, according to eyewitnesses accounts and whatever. So, but,
And that's when you have adaptations like that, and you have different individuals showing adaptations like that, you start to kind of question where those influences come from.
right.
I mean, for
Yeah. Another thing too is where some of the I've heard some bizarre descriptions of alleged Bigfoot stories, and another thing we got to think about too. What's the possibility of interbreeding, incest
Right.
within groups, family groups, and a lot of people believe that Bigfoot works in a lot of times there's different groups of them. Like my encounter, I have reason to believe that was a family unit, a juvenile, male, female. So I don't think that's the case all the time because a lot of reports that I get here in Virginia, people have witnessed mainly just seeing one at a time. I had one story where someone saw two of them cross the road together. So I mean, sometimes I do believe they work in small groups. I don't think they're big groups. Are non-human primate groups. They work like chimpanzees and gorillas. Yeah, they hunt and feed and work in big groups.
Yep.
So,
It's always a group effort with with all members involved in different aspects.
right. Now I'm not entirely sure on chimpanzees, but I know with gorillas, if you got a large group of gorillas, majority of the time, a majority of them are females because
Yes.
a large group of females will tend to one male. So that one male will work with all of them. The females usually look to a dominant male that can provide for them. Kind of like it's almost like with humans. A female, if she's going to date this guy, she wants to make sure he's going to be, he can work and take care of her, and their kids.
Right.
It's kind of how it is with gorillas. They want to, they have that same lifestyle, if you think about it. So, yeah, it's very interesting. Something to keep in mind for, people that might want to start considering Bigfoot a possible primate. And for the record, I'm not making them equal to our known non-human primates, but I believe there's a lot of similarities and a lot to consider.
Yeah.
And that's all I tell people is just at least give us some consideration. I'm not telling anybody to believe what I present. Just, I think it has gotten some people thinking, but
Yeah. Most people think that primate to human, that it's this, simple line graft of offshoots, here and there, when actually it's more like a shrubbery bush of, all the different, points from where things, where different species and different primates and humans originate from. I think we've only started scratching the surface of, what the human evolutionary tree is, and origins. I think there is much more to be found, and maybe 100 years from now, we might figure out where the Bigfoot, Sasquatch, element fits in, onto that.
Right. Yeah, I believe it's a matter of time. Some people don't think, oh, we'll never know what it is. I said, don't say that. That's thinking negative,
Right.
And that's part of the fun behind the mystery, Um, keep on searching, keep on getting out there, boots on the ground, and it's one thing if to get out there and explore and find what you can, but I like to encourage people to start studying otherwise. If you can't get out in the woods, there's a lot of research you could do. Make your own notes, and start comparing things, there's a lot, especially investigating a situation or whatever it may be. I use the process of elimination, that's a scientific method, especially with forensics and, like how a lot of investigators do their crime scenes. So,
Right.
So there's a lot of different ways that we can look at this and how to research and understand things. Comparing notes to other species, because, that's one thing. People think Bigfoot's a human, well, then we should have all the answers, That's one thing I know. Other primatologists have said this, that if Bigfoots exist, you need, for example, take your subject of study, Bigfoot, and there's different steps and procedures we could look at. If you think he's this or that, then you got to take those other subjects and study them and compare what you observe and witness and experience. Here, I was like, and I've done that with primates, and a lot of things compare and match up with our non-human primates, such as our chimpanzees, gorillas, bonobos, et cetera, et cetera. So, but it's a lot of comparing to do. So, if you think Bigfoot's something else, we'll start comparing notes, find the similarities. I know a lot of times the Bigfoot tracks, they look like our feet, but larger, wider. And that's not always the case. Sometimes people find some weird, bizarre-looking tracks. A lot of the tracks I've found, a lot of them look very human-like, but I notice a lot of times that, I guess it depends on how heavy the subject is. Sometimes the toes are spread out, or some toes are shorter and taller, longer. They all vary.
Right. Well,
So,
just like human feet do. I know that my footprint is different than both my mom and my dad's. So there is that degree of change, between, different individuals. I wouldn't expect each and every one to be identical, because then I would start thinking it was maybe a hoaxer, leaving the tracks.
yeah, and in identifying a track, trying to make a determination on a track if it's male or female, a lot of people, have I don't know how to say this, a misperception on this, or a misunderstanding, because, they think, if it's got a narrow heel, then it's female. If it's got a wide heel, it's male. That's not always the case. I encourage people to do if you want to study the human foot, there's studies online you can look up. There's several different studies on the human foot compared to male versus female. Come to find out, the female has the longer, usually a larger foot than a male.
Right.
So, so people don't, they actually, for those who think it's human, you're fooling yourself. Do some online studies. You'll be surprised with the comparisons and the notes that you will discover. But a lot of times, if people find a very narrow, pointy heel and very wide. You know, if it goes up more in a V, most likely you might be looking at a bear track.
Yep.
Because bear tracks are got a very narrow, pointy heel. You know, if you're looking at their hind foot. You know, so yeah, there's something to really keep in mind. So that's one thing I like to tell people. So.
Yeah, it's always good to have you know, an idea of what the foot tracks of like bear and humans are, so that you have something to work off of for comparison.
Yeah, and overall, like I mentioned about the wildlife earlier, the one statement I always tell people: if you don't know and understand what is known, how are you going to learn and understand what is considered to be unknown?
Right.
Like, Bigfoot's considered to be unknown. He's unclassified. You know, a lot of us know that he does exist. Either we've had experience or witnessed him for ourselves, or found enough evidence to support that he does exist. You know, because before I ever had an encounter, I was a knower a long time ago. Because when I started getting out there and looking for the evidence, I found evidence that convinced me that Bigfoot exists. I mean, the tracks. I don't believe people. The tracks I find, some of the places I do find them, I don't believe people are hoaxing them. I believe what I find are the real deal. So, because I know my father showed somebody a track. Some of my tracks are at my father's house in the garage. And Dad showed one guy, an older gentleman, and he's like, "Well, my grandson's got a 13-inch foot track." He says, "Well," my father came back and asked him, "Is he running around out in the middle of a national forest barefoot?" Because a lot of my tracks average between 13 to 16 inches.
Right.
I have found them a little larger, but that's kind of rare. Most of my tracks around, like I said, they're between 13 to 16 inches, and over the years, I have come across tracks and I collected them, and I actually found a couple recently. Because I've been out in the woods here recently, and I've noticed some were questionable, but they're out there, they're moving around. So it's that time of year when the weather is nice, they do get to move around more. So the trees, the leaves, everything's starting to sprout and bud. But see, in my area, I believe I might have I like to believe I have the perfect area because all the food sources are there. There's a lot of food sources. If Bigfoot's eating and feeding off of deer, there's tons of deer there. All the water sources are there. So, and one thing too, if people want to look for Bigfoot signs, think about where a bear will go.
Right.
Bears follow the water. And I believe the same thing with the Sasquatches. They got to eat and drink, so stay around water sources.
Right.
But that's me.
Well, we are coming up on just over an hour. So, if possible, I would love to have you back on the show a couple months from now, and hopefully everybody will be able to get out to go researching in the woods and finding evidence. So I would love to talk to you in a couple of months and see if you found anything new and talk more of Bigfoot. Oh,
yeah. I'll be more than glad to. Absolutely. So, yeah, for those who will hear this show, get out there in the woods and explore. I mean, it's a lot of education out there in the woods, but don't be afraid to research outside of the woods, and, so have fun with it too, So, and learn and get familiar with your known wildlife.
Yes.
Their sounds, their tracks, everything. That's very important. So,
yeah, that's one of the biggest things with if you're going to do Bigfoot and you're going to do any type of cryptozoology research. Learn what the local wildlife is, what the local birds are, because that just gives you more knowledge to work with.
Yeah, and one more thing too. A lot of people are famous for pointing out broken trees and different things like that. When it comes to stuff like that and a lot of other things as well, Bigfoot should be your last consideration or your last conclusion for what did that. Because bears are famous for breaking and pushing over trees and making them get bent. And there's some trees that grow bent and bowed over. A lot of trees over a period of time will bow over. Because a lot of trees bend and stretch towards the sunlight.
Right.
But
right.
also bears will climb and pull down trees. Over the years when we get a lot of snow and ice, snow, when it weighs that tree down, if it's down long enough, the fibers of those trees become stretched inside, causing that tree to stay bent, So most of the time, a lot of trees will spring back up, but that's not always the case.
Right.
So yeah, but remember, Bigfoot should be your last consideration. That's why wildlife is number one, Bigfoot number two. So very important. Keep that in mind.
Sounds good. And I hope people take that information and use it when they're doing their research and investigations.
Absolutely. Yeah, but always have fun with it though. It's fun just being out there. I mean, discoveries will happen in time. Just be patient, be consistent. So. But thank you for having me on. This has been great. It's been a while since I've been interviewed, but I do appreciate speaking and getting putting the information out there. So.
Oh, no problem. I enjoyed having you on the show, and it was great talking to you. Very insightful, and I look forward to talking to you in the future.
Absolutely, and I'll probably shoot you a message right after we get off here. So.
Okay, excellent.
So, all right.
Well, thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful day, and stay safe out there.
All right, absolutely. Thank you again.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.